You think you know the people around you, your friend who always offers help, your colleague who never seems stressed, your partner who says everything's fine. But what if I told you that Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, spent his nights writing about something that would shatter your trust in what people show you? What if every smile, every gesture, every "I'm okay" is just a performance? And what if there's a way to see through it all? Marcus Aurelius didn't just rule an empire, he decoded human nature. And in his private journals, he left us a psychological map that no one talks about. Not the motivational quotes you see on Instagram. The real observations, the uncomfortable truths about why people act the way they do. This isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming awake. Because once you see what Marcus saw, you'll never look at people the same way again. And that's not a threat. That's a gift. Picture this. You're the most powerful person on earth. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone performs for you. Everyone lies to you with a smile. How do you survive? How do you know who to trust? Marcus Aurelius figured it out, and he wrote it down in what we now call meditations. But these weren't feel-good philosophy. They were survival notes, psychological warfare tactics, how to read people when your life depends on it. From a young age, you're trained to trust what people say. Words are our currency. But Marcus warned us not to be fooled by language, because people don't speak from truth. They speak from survival, from ego, from fear. The surface of someone's personality is not them. It's their armor. The person who seems overly kind may not be kind at all. They may be terrified of rejection. The one who seems strong may be crumbling underneath, hoping no one notices. And what's most deceptive about humans is they don't even know they're doing it. Most people are actors in a play. They didn't write. Their smiles, their opinions, their tone, all shaped by what kept them safe. And this is why most people aren't hiding from you. They're hiding from themselves. Marcus once wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is perspective, not truth." But he didn't mean that as philosophy. He meant it as a warning to not confuse the mask with the person. Here's what no one tells you. People leak the truth all the time. Not in their words, but in the cracks. The moments they look away, the way they laugh too long, the way they quickly change the subject when it gets too close. And Marcus's first psychological insight is this one. Everyone wears a mask to survive, not because they're fake, but because they're scared. To survive society, people create a version of themselves they hope will be accepted. But masks aren't perfect, they slip. And the first sign of truth is tension. Watch for what makes someone uncomfortable. That's where the real person begins. Marcus discovered something else. What someone hates in others reveals what they're hiding in themselves. This is one of Marcus's sharpest insights. Projection. When someone constantly mocks arrogance, Marcus would tell you they're often insecure about their own self-worth. When someone can't stop pointing out dishonesty in others, Marcus knew they're usually hiding a truth they haven't faced. We hate in others what we're afraid to admit in ourselves. So when you want to read someone, Marcus advised, don't just look at what they admire, look at what they criticize and why. Marcus observed this pattern in every senator who came before him. The ones who spoke loudest about virtue were often the most corrupt. The ones who accused others of weakness were often the most afraid. Marcus learned to listen not to their accusations, but to their confessions. Silence reveals more than words. Marcus didn't believe truth came from talking. In fact, he saw language as a tool of the herd, often used to avoid confronting reality. When someone pauses before answering, when they dodge certain topics, when they give short rehearsed replies to deep questions, Marcus knew that silence was louder than speech. A person avoiding vulnerability is revealing everything about what they feel. Marcus experienced this during his military campaigns, when his generals spoke confidently about battle plans, but avoided eye contact. Marcus understood they were afraid. When advisors praised his strategies but hesitated before answering direct questions, Marcus realized they disagreed, but feared saying so. The silence told Marcus more than any words could. Excessive virtue is often disguised vanity. Be wary of the person who loudly proclaims their purity, the one always correcting others, always preaching. Marcus called this the will to power in disguise. Sometimes morality becomes a mask for superiority. The louder the virtue signal, Marcus observed, the more likely there's something being hidden behind it. Real goodness doesn't need applause. Marcus encountered this constantly in the Roman Senate. Senators who gave passionate speeches about justice and virtue, but Marcus noticed their private behavior told a different story. They were performing morality to gain influence, not practicing it to help others. People don't lie to you first, they lie to themselves. This one changes everything. According to Marcus, the lies you hear from people, "I'm fine, I'm over it, I don't care," aren't lies to hurt you. They're lies they've rehearsed so often, they believe them. Marcus understood self-deception, not as evil, but as defense, a way to keep functioning in a painful world. So when someone's story doesn't quite add up, Marcus would say, don't assume they're trying to deceive you. Realize they've been doing it to themselves far longer. And that's what makes reading them possible, Marcus discovered, because the inconsistencies reveal the truth. Where someone feels superior, they're hiding inferiority. This is pure Marcus Aurelius. He believed that superiority is often overcompensation. If someone constantly reminds you of their accomplishments, Marcus knew they likely fear they're not enough. If someone puts others down casually, Marcus understood they're probably terrified of being overlooked. Real confidence doesn't compete, it just. So if someone needs to dominate, control, or prove, Marcus advised, looking deeper behind the throne, you'll often find a scared child wearing a crown. Marcus witnessed this in his own court. The advisors who boasted loudest about their wisdom were often the most insecure about their intelligence. The generals who spoke most aggressively about their courage were often the most afraid of battle. Reading people isn't about judging them, Marcus taught. It's about understanding their core. When someone interrupts constantly, you now know it's not always arrogance. It might be fear of being forgotten. When someone posts obsessively about happiness, Marcus would tell you it may be a cry for help. When someone avoids eye contact while saying "I'm fine," Marcus learned to listen to the body, not the center. Use these truths, not to gain power, Marcus insisted, but to extend compassion, because the more clearly you see someone, the less likely you are to hate them. And that's Marcus's secret. He didn't want you to see through others, so you could control them. He wanted you to see through them, so you could stop being fooled and start connecting. And if you've ever looked at someone and felt like you were only seeing the surface, if you've ever wished you could decode what's really going on beneath the mask, drop a comment below. Let's talk about the moments when people showed you the truth without saying a word. And if this video helped you see people differently, subscribe. There's much more coming, and you'll want to see the rest of Marcus's insights unfold. It's one thing to notice the mask, it's another thing entirely to watch it crack. If you've ever paid attention, you've probably seen it happen. A flash of discomfort when someone's beliefs are challenged, the way their tone shifts when the subject gets too close, the nervous laugh that doesn't match the word. These moments aren't mistakes, they're clues, and if you know what to look for, you'll begin to understand that people aren't hard to read, they're just scared to be seen. In the first part we explored how people build personas to protect themselves, but here we go deeper into the places where those personas begin to break. Because Marcus believed that the self is not a stable thing, it's a performance, a stitched-together role, meant to survive the world, and the moment it's threatened, the truth leaks out. Most actions are driven by fear. Let's start here, because it's more universal than you think. Marcus discovered that most actions are driven by unconscious fear. Ask yourself this: why does someone over-explain? Why do they dominate a conversation or disappear completely? Why do they say yes when they clearly mean no? Fear of abandonment, rejection, humiliation, failure. Marcus knew that humans rarely act from pure desire. They act from a deep fear of loss, of status, of love, of self-worth. So when you want to read someone, Marcus taught, stop focusing on what they say they want. Instead ask, what are they afraid of losing? That's where the truth lives. Marcus learned this during the Antonine Plague, when death surrounded him, when comfort disappeared. Marcus watched how people's true fears emerged. Senators who claimed to care about the empire suddenly became obsessed with protecting their own wealth. Generals who spoke of honor began making secret deals with enemies. Fear revealed their true priorities. Criticism is a mirror. Next time someone constantly critiques others, listen closely. Marcus understood that when someone criticizes too much, it's projection. The man who mocks emotional people might be terrified of his own feelings. The woman who belittles others for their appearance might be locked in a secret war with her reflection. Marcus said that judgment is almost never about the other. It's about the self. So when you hear repeated criticisms, don't be distracted by the target. Instead, trace the line back to the speaker. What part of them are they trying to disown? Projection isn't just a defense mechanism, Marcus realized. It's a confession. If you listen right, it tells you exactly where someone's pain lives. Marcus observed this in his own relationships. The advisor who constantly criticized others for being too emotional was the same man who privately struggled with rage. The senator who mocked others for their lack of discipline was himself battling addiction to wine and gambling. Confidence is often guilt in costume. There's a kind of person you've probably met, the one who seems overly sure of themselves, always in control, always composed. But watch long enough, and you'll see the tension in their jaw, the way they over-prepare, the defensiveness under pressure. Marcus discovered that guilt hides behind false confidence. Marcus observed this phenomenon in leaders, teachers, preachers, those who perform certainty because they're scared of being seen. When someone is chronically confident, Marcus taught, look for the guilt they're trying to bury. Maybe it's something they regret. Maybe it's a version of themselves they're trying to prove wrong. Real peace doesn't perform, Marcus understood. So when someone seems too confident, don't be intimidated, be curious. Marcus experienced this personally after making difficult decisions as emperor, decisions that led to death, suffering, or hardship. Marcus noticed how some of his advisors would become overly confident in their next recommendations. They were trying to bury their guilt about previous advice with a performance of certainty. Exaggeration reveals the hidden truth. This one is subtle but powerful, and once you see it, Marcus promised, you can't unsee it. People betray themselves through exaggeration. Someone who constantly says, I don't care what anyone thinks, likely cares deeply, Marcus observed. Someone who claims, I'm always happy, likely isn't. Exaggeration is a tell. It's the ego trying to drown out doubt. Marcus believed that extremism in any direction is a form of imbalance, not strength. So when someone's statements sound too absolute, Marcus advised, don't believe the content, read the insecurity underneath. Exaggeration is volume. The question is, what are they trying to silence? Marcus noticed this in his own court. Constantly, the advisor, who claimed he never made mistakes, was the one most afraid of being wrong. The general who boasted he was always ready for battle was the one who spent sleepless nights worrying about strategy. The desire for control masks inner chaos. Control. We seek it everywhere, in our jobs, our relationships, our routines, but some people crave it to the point of obsession, and that's a sign. Marcus realized that those who seek control often fear inner chaos. Marcus saw this clearly. When the inner world is disordered, the outer world must be managed. Obsessive. If someone micromanages every detail, if they can't handle change, if they dominate people to feel powerful, Marcus knew, it's not because they're strong, it's because something inside them feels out of control. So instead of fearing the controlling person, Marcus taught, see them for what they are. Someone terrified that the moment they let go, it will all fall apart. The stricter the outer shell, Marcus observed, the more fragile the inner self. Marcus lived this truth
During his reign, the advisors who tried to control every aspect of imperial policy were often the ones most terrified of chaos in their personal lives. The generals, who micromanaged every military detail, were usually the ones most afraid of their own lack of control. Performance schools, emptiness in disguise. This is one of Marcus's most haunting insights, and it applies more today than ever. The louder the performance, the emptier the core. Look at social media. Marcus would say, if he lived today, the endless look at me energy, the perfect poses, the constant updates, the curated identity. Marcus didn't see this as strength. He saw it as desperation. When someone is constantly performing, Marcus understood, it's because they don't believe they'll be seen or loved without it. So they create noise, color, drama. But the person who truly knows themselves doesn't need to be watched. They're already whole. So when someone's life looks like a performance, Marcus taught, remember this, it's not a show of power, it's a whisper of need. Marcus experienced this in Rome's social gatherings. The citizens, who threw the most elaborate parties, who wore the finest clothes, who told the most exciting stories. Marcus noticed these were often the people most desperate for validation, most afraid of being forgotten. Putting it together, you're probably starting to feel it now. You walk into a room, and suddenly the patterns speak louder than the words. You see someone interrupting constantly, and realize they're terrified of being forgotten. You see someone who boasts endlessly, and sense their invisible wound. You're not reading minds, you're reading the mask. And Marcus gave you the flashlight. This isn't just a skill, Marcus believed, it's a responsibility. Because once you learn to see people clearly, you can't unsee it, and you'll begin to understand that most people are suffering quietly behind polished smiles. Reading them is not about gaining leverage, Marcus insisted. It's about offering grace. When you see the child behind the critic, the fear behind the bully, the guilt behind the arrogance, you don't become weaker, you become unshakable. Want more? If this part of the video opened your eyes, wait until the final part, because now we strip away the final layer. We'll explore how people's deepest childhood wounds show up in their adult personalities, how their envy, their silence, their need to be remembered, all reveal their soul. By now, something in you has shifted. You don't just see people, you read them, not as villains, not as victims, but as humans, trying to survive with masks they didn't even choose. But we're not done yet, because behind every behavior is a belief, and behind every belief is a wound. This final part is about learning to recognize the soul, the deep story that hides underneath the surface of everyone you meet. Marcus didn't just expose people's patterns, he illuminated where those patterns come from. Let's finish what we started. No one speaks from logic, they speak from pain. You might think that people are rational, that they argue based on facts, make decisions based on reason, but Marcus believed otherwise. Marcus understood that underneath every logical argument is an emotional wound. A person might say, I don't believe in love, it's just a fantasy. But listen closely. Marcus would tell you, they're not stating a fact, they're protecting a pain. People form their views based on what hurt them, then justify those views with logic. So when you want to understand someone's worldview, Marcus advised, don't just ask what they believe, ask what broke them, ask what scared them, ask what they never want to feel again. This changes everything, Marcus realized. It shifts your focus from why are they saying this, to what are they afraid of repeating, and suddenly their opinions aren't threats, they're defenses. Their arguments aren't attacks, they're shields. And when you see that, Marcus taught, you stop reacting, you start understanding. Marcus applied this principle constantly. When senators argued against certain policies, Marcus would ask himself, what personal experience is driving this opposition? Often, he discovered their political positions were really personal protections. How someone reacts to weakness reveals their power. Want to truly see someone's character? Don't watch how they treat powerful people. Marcus taught, watch how they treat someone who can't fight back. Marcus believed that real strength isn't proven through domination, it's revealed through restraint. If someone mocks vulnerability, Marcus knew they're afraid of their own. If someone punishes mistakes, Marcus observed, they likely weren't allowed to make any. If someone always wins, but leaves others bleeding, Marcus understood, they're still at war with themselves. But the person who can witness weakness without judgment, who can sit with sadness without running away, who can forgive what they could have punished, that's someone who is no longer ruled by the past. They don't need to prove anything, Marcus realized, because they've already won the inner war. So, if you want to read someone, Marcus advised, give them a moment where compassion is an option. What they do in that moment will show you who they are, not just who they pretend to be. Marcus tested this principle throughout his reign. He would watch how his advisors treated servants, how his generals spoke to common soldiers, how his friends behaved with people who couldn't advance their careers. These moments revealed more about character than any public speech or grand gesture. When someone fears being forgotten, they chase attention. Ever met someone who always needs to be seen? Every room they enter, every story they tell, every outfit they wear screams, "Notice me." At first glance, it looks like confidence, but Marcus saw through it. He believed that the hunger for attention often comes from a deeper fear, the fear of being invisible, of being erased, of living and dying without leaving a mark. So people create noise not because they love it, but because they can't bear the silence. The child who was ignored becomes the adult who overcompensates, and instead of asking for love directly, they demand it indirectly, through performance, drama, or chaos. So when you see someone who's too much, Marcus would say, don't be quick to judge. Ask what they're afraid will happen if they're not enough. Because sometimes attention isn't vanity. Marcus understood, it's a cry. Marcus witnessed this in his own family. Some relatives who had grown up overlooked became adults who couldn't stop performing, seeking validation, demanding to be the center of every gathering. Marcus learned to see their need rather than judge their noise. The person they attack is often the person they envy. One of Marcus's boldest truths, and one of the hardest to admit, is this: people don't always attack because they hate. They often attack because they admire, but feel they can never be. Criticism is easier than admiration, Marcus observed. So the person who tears down someone successful, who mocks someone confident, who gossips about someone free, isn't just mean, they're in pain. Because to see someone embody a part of you that you've abandoned, Marcus realized, is to be reminded of what you've lost. So, instead of celebrating the other, we destroy them. But envy is just unspoken desire. Marcus understood, it's the soul saying, I want that too, but I don't believe I'm allowed. If you can see this in others, Marcus taught, you become immune to petty hate. If you can see this in yourself, you become free. Marcus experienced this when watching how some senators responded to successful military campaigns led by others. Instead of celebrating Rome's victories, these senators would find ways to criticize the successful general. Marcus realized their attacks came from envy of military glory they themselves had never achieved. People act out their childhood, not their beliefs. You've heard it said, people don't change. But Marcus would say, people repeat the roles they were forced to play, the fears they were taught to carry, the dynamics they never escaped. A person who was never heard becomes someone who never listens. A person who was punished for expressing emotions becomes cold, logical, detached. A person who had to earn love becomes someone who performs for affection even when it's toxic. They think they're acting from beliefs, Marcus observed, but really they're just reenacting the past. So if you want to read someone, Marcus taught, don't just look at who they are, ask who they had to be, because behavior is just biography, Marcus realized, and behind every adult is a child, still waiting to feel safe. Marcus applied this insight to understanding his own son, Commodus. Instead of just seeing Commodus's troubling behaviors, Marcus tried to understand what childhood experiences had shaped them. What had Commodus learned about power, love, and safety that was now playing out in destructive ways. Their patterns are a confession, if you know how to listen. This is the final truth, and it changes everything. According to Marcus, people don't always know how to express what hurts, but they will show you again and again, through patterns. A person who ghosts when things get close. A person who overworks to avoid stillness. A person who flirts with everyone, but connects with no one. These aren't random behaviors. Marcus understood. They're confessions. They're saying, this is how I protect myself. They're saying, this is where I was hurt. They're saying, this is what I fear repeating.
Marcus believed that if you learn to listen deeply, not to words but to patterns, you can hear the truth before it's spoken. And when you do, something amazing happens. You stop personalizing. You stop judging. You start understanding. You become a mirror, not a weapon. You become someone who sees and still chooses grace. And that, more than any tactic or trick, Marcus taught, is what makes you powerful. You're not just reading people. You're remembering yourself. Marcus spent his final years, during the plague, observing these patterns in extreme circumstances. When death was everywhere, when normal social structures collapsed, people's deepest patterns emerged clearly. Some became more generous, others more selfish. Some found courage, others discovered cowardice, but all revealed their core programming through their patterns of response. Now, take a moment and reflect. Every truth we covered wasn't just about other people. It was about you, your own patterns, your own fears, your own childhood scripts. Because the more clearly you see others, Marcus taught, the more clearly you see yourself. This isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a new way of seeing. Marcus didn't just want us to observe. He wanted us to awaken, to know that everything we judge in others is something we carry, that everything we admire is something we long to embody. So if you've felt seen by this video, if you've recognized patterns in people or in yourself, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below which of these truths hit you the hardest. Let's build something honest together in a world full of masks. And if this spoke to you, subscribe. This is just the beginning of learning to see what's hidden and becoming who you really are. Marcus Aurelius faced his own death with the same clarity he brought to reading others. His final words were reportedly, "Go to the rising sun, for I am already setting." He faced death as he had faced life, seeing clearly, without illusion, accepting truth without flinching. You'll never look at people the same way again. But more importantly, Marcus would say, you'll never look at yourself the same way again. And that's when real power begins. That's when real life starts. That's when you become who you were meant to be all along.